This is the rule that many in the industry that have been waiting for. So it seems like a golden ticket. It seems like the skies are opening up and light is shining through and saying, "Hey, we're getting to that stage where we thought drones would be at a point that really unlocks their true capabilities on what they can do in a multitude of different industries, as well as for ourselves in the UAS industry."
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Flight Path SDI's podcast about everything uncrewed technology, drones, stuff like that. I'm your host, Christian Sequeira, event coordinator here at SDI. I am accompanied by the crew, the Flight Path crew, Steve Ross, Don Heon, and James McDanolds. How's everybody doing today?
Real good.
Wonderful.
Good, good. So we are talking about BVLOS. And part 108, Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Somebody explain that to this gun guy that hosts the drone podcast.
So for BVLOS, that's short for Beyond Visual Line of Sight. And Part 108 is for the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. What it is essentially the Federal Aviation Administration saying, "Hey, here's the rules we want to put out, but we want everyone to be aware of them in advance and have a chance to comment of them and give us feedback on them. So in case there's something that we need to consider that wasn't previously considered, we can accommodate that or hopefully change the rules and regulations as they're proposed before it's officially released in the near future." Normally when one of these comes out, it's not long after that they are officially released. So what we're talking about today is not officially set in stone yet.
Okay, so I read a lot of the stuff that you guys sent me. Let's just start from the beginning. Everybody who's probably watching this knows about Part 107, but go from the beginning and then, why do we need all this stuff to regulate how we're flying and what we're flying?
Yes, sir. Certainly. So it all started out with the FAA 333 exemptions, which required you to have a actual manned aircraft pilot's license to fly a drone for commercial purposes. And that was the start of it all. And it was like that since 2013 is really when those first started being issued and released by the FAA. And they were like Part 107 waivers essentially, but they had much tighter restrictions to them. And there wasn't a Part 107 to have a license by. Part 107 came out in 2016, which allowed individuals to go and take a test, get their official license to fly drones commercially, as well as fly them for different applications, which really opened the initial floodgates to the drones usage in the commercial industries and different applications. But there were still some restrictions: being allowed to fly at night, being allowed to fly beyond visual line of sight, flying multiple drones at once, and then flying them from a car or over people in populated spaces. And people had to apply for waivers to do that. Or at the time, as these waivers were given by the FAA to operators and companies, they collected data and information. In the past, Part 107 night operations was a waiverable operation. Now it's just part of the standard 107 because there's enough data to validate it as a rule set. Now, with enough data collected for beyond visual line of sight and multi-UAS and larger scale commercial operations, Part 108 is essentially the answer to flying those two previously waiverable flight operation types, but instead getting rid of the waivers, have it on a national scale. But it's not part of Part 107. It's a completely different rule set.
James, it's not that you didn't do a good job explaining that, but it feels like the rules have always kind of been complicated.
Yes.
Almost like you had to know somebody to get your foot in the door to figure out how to do these type of things, especially legally. Is like, James, Donna, is that how it was in the early days? What were the resources like way back when, if you didn't know anything of how to start?
If you didn't know anything of how to start, like how to submit for a 333 exemption, the only way you really could is through reading up on the rules and regulations that were set forth for it. And it wasn't even a rule and regulation. It was kind of it was almost like a notice of proposed rulemaking. It was like a substandards. It was a notice, if you will, or an advisory circular, as they call it in the FAA, to, "Hey, here's how you go about filling out your application. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you're limited to." And at that time, it could take 180 days to get approval to even conduct an operation under 333 exemption. So unless you knew somebody, you weren't getting anything back in time for an operation, most likely.
So before this change, like why were waivers such a big deal, and could just anyone get one?
So before this change, waivers were a big deal because they accounted for types of operations that there wasn't a lot of data that the industry had yet to validate the safety of their operation and their type of usage. So essentially, the waivers were a way for individuals to get permission to fly in very specific rules laid out by the FAA with heavy FAA oversight. Um, until the FAA had enough data from those who they supplied waivers to in order to standardize the rules that they're applying to multiple individuals or companies that have these waivers. So like example, Part 108, it's possible because of the work done in the integrated pilot program from 2019 from 2018 to 2020, and then now the FAA Beyond program and the FAA's approval of beyond visual line of sight waivers and multi-UAS waivers to multiple different commercial operators and companies out there like Wing or Amazon Prime for their Prime Air deliveries for drones. So, yeah, collection of the data makes this kind of stuff possible.
So, Don, why is it important for Part 108 to become a thing?
Well, back when I started, and frankly, still just a few years ago, it's really just been the Wild West. Like you can go to Best Buy, you can buy a drone, and you can fly anywhere you want. I mean, obviously, there's rules that you might be breaking along the way, but it's so unregulated at the moment, and we need to be able to scale commercial operations and not stagger industry growth. So we haven't been able to innovate in this space because we don't have regulations around that. So now that regulations are being proposed around these BVLOS operations, now companies can actually innovate to these regulations and start to propel the industry forward. And frankly, this has been a long time coming. You know, we've been first in aviation with the Wright brothers, and we need to be first in aviation with, especially beyond visual line of sight, because it's going to be a major factor to the economy. Drones are not going anywhere, and if we don't have regulations around commercial use and scalable regulations at that, we're always going to be behind the curve. So it's been a long time coming, and this is a huge, huge part of the industry right now. Like the biggest part to happen since drones basically came out.
So if, for commercial use, once beyond visual line of sight is a thing, how is it going to affect just the consumer, the folks who aren't flying the drones? What are we going to see more of with that being a thing?
Yeah, James, you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So you're going to see drone delivery become more full scale. Right now, there's limited operations throughout different parts of the United States. The FAA has granted those beyond visual line of sight waivers to practice conducting the operation, get the flight data, and for them to be able to create rules and regulations like this and validate them with data to back it up. Instead of it being limited to those few small areas, you'll see it at scale. This is an unlocker, essentially, not just for drone delivery, but in one of our previous episodes, we were talking about agriculture. Well, for an aircraft that big, you had to fly, one operator to one aircraft. Like there wasn't really a way to do multi-UAS operations with it. Technically, yes, but regulatory waters were murky. Now, with this rule, it's talking about drones up to 1,320 pounds. It's a big weight increase. So now think about multi-UAS conducting operations for agriculture instead, like we talked about, leaving them in a box at the field, multiples of them, and then being able to send them out and do their operation without having to step outside of the field, essentially. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Just so you guys mentioned it made me think of something. So the question is like, I know consumer habits are what's going to drive the commercial side of everything, almost every aspect of our lives. Like, is that's what we should expect? Like my wife's ordering habits on Amazon of junk is going to be like the next big innovation for what Amazon does for drone delivery. Like, is that?
Don't forget Uber Eats,
seriously,
Grubhub.
Like me ordering junk online is just going to be delivered via drone, and like that's what's going to drive the innovation to make those deliveries easier.
It's not just drone deliveries. That's one facet to Part 108, but there's many other facets. That's a big driving factor. Package delivery is going to be a thing, but also beyond visual line of sight for agriculture use, civic interests, many others. Even they have proposed recreational side of things in Part 108. So it's not just drone deliveries. That is a big factor, but there's many others.
When you're considering beyond visual line of sight, like a lot of people, like one of the more active things that a lot of people are paying attention to because it has a direct effect on the consumer is that drone delivery commercial side of it. Like, oh hey, now I can get my Amazon order in 2 hours instead of 24, right? But instead, let's think about it. Well, what about that in rural locations, or what about that for transmission line inspections? Right now, you don't have to have a pilot that keeps following along with the aircraft to keep an eye on it along that whole stream of transmission lines. And instead, you can have that pilot do 50 plus miles in one flight, gathering information on a transmission line inspection, instead of using a car going along the service lines to get that same
I know this is
data.
a little, getting us a little bit off topic, but just for me to clarify and wrap my brain right, for deliveries like that, for especially for packages, like, there'll just be another kind of component to delivery. Like, we'll go from like a major central hub to now you'll have basically like a hub on wheels that they could just load into a drone that services an area, and then that does a neighborhood. Like, is there is it really going to save that much time and effort versus loading up anything size or weight into a delivery truck and making my rounds versus having to basically do that same thing, but then I can get a little bit closer to the next stop before releasing a drone to do the final delivery?
I think that like that's yet to be seen exactly the logistics on how that's going to happen. There may be a possibility that packages could be loaded on a truck and they could just park somewhere and deliver out to urban neighborhoods. But of course, the public's going to have to be okay with that, with drones flying over their house. So that's yet to be seen. But there's many other ways to go about this. You could set a little hub outside of an urban development, and then you could just launch from that hub. So it's still kind of up in the air right now as far as how that's going to happen. But
And
we'll
I
see.
guess like would the real benefit come when the point comes to like, okay, you don't even have to have a drone operator. Can you just like, oh, I'm going to load up 50 drones, plug in all the addresses at once, and they just go all automatically to make deliveries? Is that going to be the end goal?
I don't know what the end goal is. I mean,
It,
companies
let's
can
think of it.
approach this from many other different ways, and there's no specifics on it right now. But
Yeah, but until then, like they need the pilots, right? They need the people to actually control whether it's beyond visual line of sight or not, right?
Yes, right now for part 107, it's one operator per aircraft within the visual line of sight, unless they have that BVLOS waiver that stipulates otherwise. Part 108 offers the ability to, and they're calling it a flight coordinator instead of a flight operator. And little description of flight coordinator is someone who is responsible for the safety of the flight and the operation of not just one, but possibly multiple aircraft. And it's essentially they're recognizing, and I think it's pretty forward thinking of the FAA, is that they're thinking not necessarily in just someone who has to manually control. They're thinking of individuals that you press a button, the aircraft goes and does its thing, and the operator is there to simply tell it to either pause its flight, resume its flight, return to home in case of an emergency, or change an altitude through a ground control station software. It's no longer like Part 108 isn't necessarily about the manual stick control input type of control operations. It's more about press the button, trust the drone to go do its thing, and the flight coordinator is monitoring that drone to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do and that it's adhering to the operational rule set that is now proposed under Part 108, essentially.
And so you could definitely have like multi UAS things within all those industries that we talked about, whether delivery or agriculture, law enforcement,
Exactly.
stuff like that. That's
Exactly.
crazy.
Yes.
Whether you're a coordinator or an operator, like you will still need to know basic flight functions and operations, right? Like that way, if
Yeah.
something is going wrong, you know what it should be doing or what not is to.
Yes. And it's great that you bring that up because Part 108 talks about, the additional training that companies need to give on the aircraft specific to the operation type in order to validate or solidify a flight or qualify a flight coordinator in order to fly for the specific application that company is flying for. So there's that additional training on top, like even if someone has a Part 107, if you're doing Part 108, you still need to go through that training in order to make sure that you are qualified to fly that specific aircraft for that operation. Because it's not just about the different type of operation. It's to have a whole new rule set. And it's also under that rule set is a lot more requirements for manufacturers to have manuals, even maintenance specifications on the aircraft. They are now requiring under Part 1, well, not requiring now, obviously it's in the notice, it's proposed that manufacturers producing drones for Part 108 must have a maintenance manual that is
Yeah.
abided by.
Just real quick, how long do you think this process should take? Like getting from proposed rulemaking to an actual regulation?
James, what was the length of Part 107 NPRM? Do you know how many pages that was? Like roughly? Is it about the same as what we're dealing with now?
That was around 300, 400.
Okay, so
Because
we're
of the
double the
complexity.
page length on Part 108, so I would say double the time frame at least. Last time
Yeah,
when we had an NPRM for
yeah. And then
Part 107, we had, I think, 52,000 comments, and it took, I don't know how long it took, 8 or 9 months to go through all those comments and then propose the rules. So
it's
it's going to be a
it,
while.
yeah, it's hard to say, like give an exact on because Don's right because the FAA is required to go through every single comment they receive, and even for the remote ID that was integrated just a couple of years ago, it was like when they released it for Notice of Proposed Rulemaking that had well over, I think it was like 2,700 comments on it. Now that compared to like 15,000 is small. But imagine the amount that we're going to see on this. Now, according to the 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act, in truth, this rule should be solidified by January of next year, at least if the timelines align correctly. But in reality, we'll probably see at earliest that time if everything works out. But in reality, it's probably going to be after that. So more like Q1, Q2, like even like March, May timeframe of 2025. So it's
Do
good
they
because there's a lot to
do
understand.
they have a deadline for commenting?
So it is 60 days from the day of release, which was on correct me if I'm wrong on this, Don, it was the 7th of this month, right? So it's been about 5 days.
Um, yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So August 67th should be the date that it comes out then? Yeah.
October 7th or October 6th is the last
Okay.
day to make comments on. So if any of you are here, or especially our students, is interested in looking into this, there's a lot of articles out on this that kind of abbreviates it a bit. There's people that download the rule and put it through AI to get some overview of it. But it's really good to read the actual draft in full yourself because there's a lot of key details in there. Nothing's left to guess,
Yeah.
essentially.
Get some coffee because it'll take you a while.
You
Yeah.
have some light reading. There
Right.
you go.
How,
Yeah.
how important is this for our students in our programs right now for uncrewed technology?
The industry is fundamentally changing right now. Like the FAA has come out with these standards to force companies and manufacturers to innovate to those standards because right now we have no way of collecting any data, at least on the FAA side of things, for beyond visual line of sight, and that is the future. So the FAA has come out with these standards to force companies to manufacture drones to those standards and also adhere to those standards, and that's the only way forward. And go
For
ahead, James.
Yeah, for our students, there's a multitude of effects of this rule. Now, to make it very clear again that this rule is separate from Part 107. There's a little bit of crossover and things of consideration, but it is meant to be its own rule set. So our students should really be paying close attention to this because if you're looking to do in advance operations to be expandable to a large scale, Part 108 is going to be the answer because it's kind of the holy grail of what people were expecting drones to get to, where you don't have to be watching them all the time for them to fly and do what they need to do. You can fly more than one aircraft because of a high level of autonomy. And it's not just affecting the commercial side of it, it's affecting the development side of it. because for us, we're already doing some heavy reading on this and looking like, okay, where do we need to update what we have in our classes in order to make sure that we are staying up to date with what's out there? Is also, even on the testing side, they are actually putting forward testing requirements for manufacturers for these aircraft that are supposed to fly under Part 108, and that there's other standards that need to be met as a part of the aircraft's development or what it's required to do for like collision avoidance systems. So it's, if you're on the development side or if you're on the commercial side, you'll want to know these rules, even if you're not necessarily flying under them immediately. If you want to expand and grow your operations for businesses in the future, and this is the path you're looking to go down, you definitely want to read up on these and know them very well.
For someone who's never flown beyond visual line of sight, like what are some of the biggest differences? Like, man, the first time you try it, you'd be like, oh, now I get it. This is what I've been missing all along.
Well, it's all about situational awareness, right? I mean, you lose a lot of that when you can't see your drone line of sight. So you have your little smart controller or your pair of goggles or whatever you're wearing, and all you can see is just that screen. But if your line of sight, you can see all the surroundings around you. As soon as you go beyond that, it's like you just lose your situational awareness. You can't see what's to the right of you or behind you. And so that's what the FAA is trying to address, safety. I mean, they're all about safety. So they need to create standards around beyond visual line of sight so that companies can innovate to these standards and be safe in the national airspace.
I consider myself lucky because I've been able to fly beyond visual line of sight in the United States and outside of it as well. And what Don said is absolutely correct. When you can't see it, that situational awareness initially goes out the window. But what you have to rely on is your ground control station software, the information that the aircraft is relaying back to that software. And a practice that we had to get into was essentially imagining the aircraft at that location, flying, doing its thing, what it's doing, what's operating like, and responding to that on the ground control station. This is where that higher level of autonomy comes into play, essentially.
So you have those challenges that come into play when you can't see the drone anymore, right? But what are those benefits that make it worth it? Like what does that expand those capabilities that like, yep, this is totally worth adding this into my toolbox of skills I can offer now?
Yep. Benefits, you can fly from anywhere. Yeah, literally being a flight coordinator could be considered an at-home job in the future, right? But at the same time, you're also in a situation where you need to manage maybe more than one aircraft. The benefits to it is like when you have to see and fly the aircraft visually, you can only fly one at a time. At the larger operational scale of things, like when you're considering salaries and things like that, when you're able to have one operator flying multiple drones and increase the return on investment of the services that are being offered with it or what you can do with them, you get faster response or faster deliveries with more aircraft to a singular operator in comparison to one-to-one operations. One of the things that the rule set puts out is collision avoidance requirements. That's what we're talking about. Like, hey, now that we don't have someone out there to see around the aircraft to make sure that where it's flying is clear and safe, there now has to be sensors on board and something to tell the operator who's far away, who can't see the aircraft physically, says that, hey, there's obstacles around you or there's another aircraft approaching you. So those things have to be added to let the pilot know, essentially.
Some follow-up questions on that. Some like use case scenarios. Is it, whether it's what the current rule is or what's with the proposed changes, how will this be affected about where you fly? Like, okay, it totally makes sense if you're going to be flying over homes or people, but how will this affect someone that has operations like, yep, I'm a mining operation. I want to fly into an area that's unsafe, whether it's air or I don't want to travel into a mine that's going to collapse. Like, does that make a difference of where you're going to fly into with needing a waiver or the permit or the clearance to do that? I mean, would flying into a underground cave be considered beyond visual line of sight if you're outside of the cave system?
Good
It's a
question.
good question.
Well, I think
Yeah.
by definition, that is beyond visual line of sight.
Yeah.
Would that be, how is that handled now versus with this 108 change?
Well, right now it's handled with waivers and exemptions. Like you have Part 107 rules, and there's certain operations that you can get waivers for. But that's a cumbersome process, and it's not scalable. So that's why, Part 108 came out, is to make all this scalable.
Like when Part 108 comes out, how many are we going to lose? Like, how many drones are we losing? Like, I've seen people within visual line of sight lose their drones.
Yeah.
Are we just going to have like a bunch of dead Lime scooters, like when batteries die and, stuff like that? We're just going to see all these like drones in trees, Amazon
Everybody's
drones.
wearing helmets.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what fail safes do we have in place? What tracking? I mean, how is all that going to work?
So it's by the rule, it's requiring a higher level of autonomy than what's been previously required to fly aircraft. And a lot of aircraft these days already have those fail-safes built in. They have low battery fail-safes that when it reaches a low battery, it's going to put you into return to home where it's going to fly back and land at your location. If it loses link, it's going to do the same thing. There's smart return to home. There's other factors like geofence. Like, hey, if you cross a certain point where you're not allowed to fly that I designate, you got to come back no matter what. Right. So there's fail safes that are in there in autonomy already that meets some of those requirements. So the idea is that with less ability for an operator to take control and tell it, no, I'm going to tell you to go where I want you to go, no matter what you say, is kind of that double-edged sword of like, hey, you're limiting the operator's ability to resolve an emergency outside of autonomy, but at the same time, you're relying on the heightened level of autonomy of the aircraft to resolve its own problems without the human coming in and possibly screwing up that response as well. Again, it's a double-edged sword, and it can depend from situation to situation, but you're right. We will see an increased number of commercial drones being used as a result of this over the next couple of years.
Is that just going to create a whole noob of like drone chasers? Like, oh, I see a Walmart drone full over my head. I'm going to make sure I'm underneath it just in case it has an issue and falls on my car, my house, on me, and get a payday.
You kind of a weird person if you try and go.
There's 7 billion people out there.
Yeah, I know.
There's a few weird
people
ones.
pull insurance scams all the time.
Yeah.
They see that there's dollars to be made.
Yep. Not going to argue that. Yeah.
That's a hard one to go by because you can't fight kinetic force taking down a drone. There's no way to combat that if someone really does it. Obviously, we've discussed it's illegal to shoot down a drone. You can't do that, so because it's considered an aircraft. So whoever does that, they got a problem on their hands bigger than, oh, hey, I got this, this new coffee maker or a small coffee maker or heater mug or something like that a delivery drone could carry, because I'm sure that's mainly going to be the thing that gets targeted, right? They want the goodies on board. It's like Christmas for them, right? But the idea is that you have rules in place to try to prevent that. The only other thing is like, how do companies handle the response to that? How is law enforcement given the power to respond to that, or how can we track the individuals that are doing that kind of stuff? It's a really good question.
Okay,
it's a hard challenge.
Like currently, if someone steals an Amazon package off my front porch, they're a porch pirate. What is I want you guys to make the name. If someone robs a drone in the air, what is that person going to be called?
Sky Raiders.
That was way better than I was going to come up with.
No,
it's not alliterative, though.
Well, I was going to say air pirate, but that's not even close to that's way better.
Air pirate. Air pirate works. Air pirate works pretty well. Package dumpers. I don't know. Gosh. Who knows, man? Somebody will come up with something, but yeah, we can think of more titles and put it on the list or something. Anyways, yeah, next question.
Well, with all that, I'm assuming, obviously they have cameras. It's going to be a whole like, dash cam, body cam kind of thing. If you see somebody shooting a drone, the drone should be able to see and record all that stuff that, hey, I didn't fall on you. You shot something at the drone trying to steal my, Labubu that I'm having delivered to my house. And it fell on you. So,
Yeah.
Labubus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You want to hear the ChatGPT list of names for people
there we go. Let's do it.
Number one was a skyjacker instead of a carjacker.
Skyjacker. Get it? Yeah.
Nice work. Okay, cool.
Drone bandits.
Okay.
Payload poachers.
There you go.
Alliteration is always what gets me. Payload poachers. I'm down with that.
An aerial assailant.
Nice.
I think now we're gonna have some Facebook groups. called
The
that.
Drone Zone Delinquents. That's going to be our gang name. Okay.
James, I
DZD.
had a question for you, and I wanted to get your perspective on this. Why do you think that they set the weight limit at 1,320 pounds? Because
I
there's
think
three different categories. You have 55 pounds, you have 110 pounds, and then you have the weight limit of 1,320. Why do you think that they set that weight limit of 1,320?
Physics.
physics. So I think it's because they have
That's such a
operations.
specific number, you know?
It is. It is. I think it's because they have operations in agriculture and maybe like larger scale delivery aircraft that meet that specific weight or just under that specific weight. If you see what I'm saying? Like there's large scale, there's medium, what we call them like medium UAVs that are around that weight for agricultural spraying because they want to be able to carry more pesticide spray, right? So you got to upscale everything, and that increases the weight of the airframe, the motors, all the components, and what you can carry. It's the same thing with delivery.
But
as
why
well.
not 1,300? Why, why?
Here's my take on this, and this is just something that I'm brainstorming. I'm not going to say this is true or not. This is just something I'm running through my head. Light sport aircraft, to get certified in light sport aircraft, the weight limit is 1,320 pounds. I think it's part 40, I don't know, 49 or 50 something.
Yeah.
But that's the weight limit. And
Don,
so
boys,
when I read that, I kind of put two and two together, and I think that not only based on the BVLOS ARC recommendation, Aviation Rulemaking Committee, of making that assumption, that I think in the future they're setting this up so that they can use Part 108 regulations to start to regulate manned traffic, like UTM, like aerial vehicles that carry people. And so I think this regulation is in place for the weight limit so that they can use these rules to scale another size, like another Part 109 or Part 110 that might come out in the future. So that was just my assumption, and I don't know.
Future thinking, like how long until the way we build buildings changes to accommodate this? Like, is an apartment building in New York City going to need drone delivery chutes type of thing? And are we going to have to either like retrofit buildings or build our new buildings to accommodate drone delivery?
Well, I think at face value, there might be like heliports on top of apartment buildings or complexes like that where drones can actually deliver a package and you can get a notification and go pick up your package. But
I was just going to go carry like a big bass fishing net on the roof.
So a lot of these drone delivery operations are small in scale. So even just existing rooftops, if there's an open space, hey, put down like clear out a landing space, put out a landing mat or a QR code, or something that the drone can recognize. Okay, this is the address that I'm supposed to deliver to when it scans it. And it says, okay, I have to deliver here. All right, I'll deliver. Oh, hey, guess what? The drone's also connected over LTE network, and it has a companion computer that when it makes the delivery and the delivery is complete, that onboard computer tells the system to notify the person who ordered it, hey, guess what? Your delivery was just made. Go to the rooftop and get it. But then we're talking about
I'm just going to go on Google Maps and copy and paste your drone delivery QR code and steal all your packages.
Yeah.
Hey, good thought.
Skyjackers await.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Clanker jackers. Here we go.
Zone delinquent strikes again.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Steve, I like the thought process. I really do, because these are things that maybe not everybody has thought of.
Life's changing.
Yeah, I'm normally, you got to think about the ABCs. Always be cheating, right? So it's the thing
if
of
you're
like
not cheating, you're not crying, is what my old football coach used to tell me.
I have hopes like this unlocks a lot, and it creates a lot of good stuff for us to really expand in the industry. But there's also like the side effects. We need to think of the new solutions, but then also like, okay, how do we, what new problems did we create as a result of these new solutions as well?
And this is what the comments are for, correct? Like, so the comments are open for like this kind of like anything from serious stuff to ridiculous stuff.
Exactly.
Correct? Like they have to read
your
through all.
drone gang name in the comments below.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point. Like, if think about it like this: anyone who's watching this who wants to put a comment like, "Hey, what think about the problem here?" Or what someone could do, the negative side effects. It's just another reason to make a comment directly because it's something that isn't thought of now. Um, and the industry's got to know because not everybody's thinking it. They may be like starry, rose-colored eyes like me, and like, oh, dude, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be fantastic. This does so much. We've been waiting for this for a while in the industry. But at the same time, like, well, it does unlock a lot. What do we need to think of in advance that may kind of delay that or add to the rule set for like, here's what restricts you from doing certain things because of the possibility of
Is
what
this
might happen.
is this how the FAA feels? Like we have like Don and James, they're experts, they're professionals, they're trying to take this very serious. Then you have idiots like me coming in like, yeah, well, what if I want to, steal your drone out of the air by, with a big net or something? And you're just like, oh my God, like, no.
Dude, I want to say idiots. It's reality though. It's the reality that we are living in. Like there are going to be individuals who like they want to find a way to take advantage of the situation, right?
How hackable are they? How hackable are drones? Like,
So that depends on what kind of control command link you're using because there's short range radio frequency, which is probably the most hackable depending on what equipment you have available. There's LTE, which I would say for anyone familiar with like Internet of Things, if anything has like a fixed IP address, which is essentially like your online identification for your computer or any kind of electronic device, if that IP address doesn't change, you're leaving yourself open to be hacked because if someone figures out that specific IP address and can get in on a port number or something, that's it. You've lost control of the device. Someone else has control or access to it now. So, but even for companies I worked in the past, when we had LTE communications, we had to have dynamic IP addresses, so it was constantly changing. And then we also had to have what was called TLS, Transport Layer Security Protocols, which is just an encryption that they put on both the receiving side and the sending side. So for you to fly these things and for them to be secure, that could be another thing where it's like, hey, these have to be TLS encrypted, and you can only have the key on a certain computer that is associated to control that aircraft. Because if you don't have that key, the aircraft isn't going to listen to your commands, essentially.
And think that goes both ways. Like you want to be able to make sure your aircraft is protected, but also like when you want to make sure that an aircraft is not entering your space as well. Like how do you keep your physical location from getting an unwanted aircraft to enter, right? Like
That's why they came out with Part 108 regulations so that companies could innovate to these standards. The FAA has to collect data on this, and we can't do that right now because it's essentially the Wild West. And, we don't have a lot of U.S. manufacturers making drones that, can relay this data to the FAA. And that's what the FAA is trying to solve right now, is they're trying to create standards for industries and companies to innovate to.
There are companies that are waivered that are required to feed information to the FAA, but those waivers are few in comparison to the vast numbers of organizations and companies that could be created as a side effect of this new rule set that are trying to get into this space, that then again have to follow these rules, test it out, and make sure that, of course, they're following what's there. But just like in Part 107, we may see changes over years of operation, gathering that data that changes the rule set as well in small ways that addresses those challenges that others haven't thought of yet.
So let's take this back to our students. So for our students and people out there looking to get into the industry, what careers should they be focused on now to prepare for the future?
To add a little bit to that and say that the Part 1A regulations are shifting the responsibility of the operator to companies and manufacturers. So there's going to be new roles out there, like James said, flight coordinator. There's also operations supervisor. And, so it's important to not only understand where the industry is going, but at least have some sort of understanding of the regulations that are going to be present, because there will be new job opportunities in companies to fly drones. Like you're just not going to be a pilot anymore. You're going to be part of an organization. And, those rules dictate exactly what kind of job roles will be in those regulated environments.
James, what courses do we teach that cover fleet management, aviation management?
So UAS 202, UAS Aviation Management, that course covers training, it covers flight operations organization structure, it covers maintenance, it covers crew resource management factors. And we even have a fleet management system software that students get access to in that course, that for their assignments, they're given a scenario, and it can be change week to week on the scenario type in the application. They have to go in there and apply the knowledge they learned that week, thinking like a flight operations manager, or by description of the new Part 108, a flight operations supervisor, to manage and use the fleet management system that we have in that course with the mock company that we have built in it to decide what the best path forward is and how to manage their mock flight operations department, which a flight operations supervisor would be required to do on top of reporting all Part 108 operations conducted to the FAA. Because Part 108, as Don mentioned, it requires operators to work very closely with the FAA in a continuous form of communication to make sure that they are adhering to the rule set and maintaining a level of safety, because these are higher risk operations, because there are different categories for rural operation areas and what that requires for you to feed to the FAA, and those who are operating in large scale metropolitan areas with complex and risky environments. So that obviously requires much more contact with the FAA than a standard operation maybe out in like the middle of West Texas with a town of 500 people might require. So that main course is one that already hits on a lot of that. Some of the other things on the development side that manufacturers are going to required to do: UAS 213, UAS 231, design, build, fly, and the flight test and evaluation. Flight test and evaluation walks you through a campaign that covers a lot of this, including sensors for collision avoidance testing. So we already have some of the knowledge in our courses on that. Of course, Don and I are going through and looking at what we currently have and saying, what do we need to also include as a result of Part 108 coming into play soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts on new proposed rulemaking for Part 108. Steve, what do you got?
If you want to join the drone zone delinquents, email me.
Okay.
Join
Don,
the Skyjackers team.
If you're
Skyjackers are going down, okay?
Sorry.
if you're unfamiliar with Part 108 and this is the first time that you're hearing about it, go read articles, hop on YouTube, read the rules, try to understand where the industry is going, because right now, if you think you know where it's going, you probably don't if this is the first time you're hearing about it. The industry now is going to fundamentally change. Like everything about commercial beyond visual line of sight is changing like today. So, get in there and start reading, start learning, and start understanding where the industry is going to go.
all right, James?
I agree with everything that Don said. I want to build on top of that. This is the rule that many in the industry have been waiting for. So it seems like a golden ticket. It seems like the skies are opening up and light is shining through and saying, hey, we're getting to that stage where we thought drones would be at a point that really unlocks their true capabilities on what they can do in a multitude of different industries, as well as for ourselves in the UAS industry. So on top of what Don said, go out there, look at the proposed draft that's out there, please comment. They're asking for it. They want comments. They want what they haven't thought of yet. They want everyone's feedback, and they have to read every single comment before they can release these or make changes to the rule set to what's being proposed. So please, we encourage you as a student, as a UAS industry professional, this is the call to action. Read it, understand it, comment it, if not just for knowing what's coming in the future, but also for maybe something that hasn't been considered, like the great points that Steve brought up as well during our conversation today. So I will leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, if you are watching this and you have any further questions, drop them in the comments. We'll try to get them answered. If you have a good name for the drone zone delinquents, just stay off our turf. But we can section stuff off. But also, if you are looking for more information on fleet management, aviation management, different career fields within the drone industry, visit our website, sdi.edu, request information, do all the things, talk to all the people. But for James, Don, Steve, I've been Christian. And that's been this week's episode of The Flight Path. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.